right. So thank you for doing this. It's quite an honor, and I'm looking forward to hearing your take on raising children,
Me too.
or maybe raising adults. Yeah.
It'll be fun, and it's nice to see you again. It's
Yeah, you too.
those 30-day sessions that we had are, we really get a chance to meet each other.
Yeah, it was an awesome experience. It was much deeper than I anticipated.
Yeah, I keep finding that for myself too.
So you are David Weinstock. I'm so happy to have you with us.
Mm.
You're a trainer in somatic NVC, or nonviolent communication. You are sort of combining the works of Marshall Rosenberg and your Aikido practice.
My work, when I think about the influence of it, is that there is the NVC, nonviolent communication. There's this Aikido, which is nonverbal nonviolent communication, an evolved martial art, if you will. And there's two other avenues that come into the work that I do as a somatic coach, and that's it's helping people to unify, re-inhabit their bodies more fully, and the intelligence and the wisdom of that, and coaching in that. And the other is building consensus in community, and living in a community for 31 years now, an intentional community with started in 1990 with 9 other families, and we're still going. It's been a lot of work because it's really it's a very different animal, but consensus really, which is the language of community. It's a remnant, it feels like, of ancient community that by its practice teaches us how to reclaim community. When I put those all together, it forms the work that I've developed called somatic consensus.
Somatic
Building,
consensus.
yes, building a unity inside, listening to what our hearts and our guts and our head, and finding that unity inside, that deep listening, and is the same practice of listening to others. So building a consensus inside is the basis for building consensus around us.
So somatic, for people who are not used to that language or that idea of being somatic, that it's essentially being in touch with your body and your body's signals.
Mind in the body. It's like your soma is that part of you that's riding the bicycle without thinking about it. It's the synchronization of thoughts, feelings, physical, all coming to all synchronized through meaning. What matters to you, what you care about. That's the organizing principle.
Right. So if you're in touch with what matters to you, you would be able to listen to your body's messages better.
Well, yes. Well, our body tells us what we care about too. The signals. And when you are in touch with what you care about, like if I said to you, what do you really care about? You know, and you started to speak maybe about your family or something you love, your system would start to settle. That's like it's like centering in what you care about, and then your heart begins to lead. When your heart begins to lead, the rest of you entrains, meaning it starts to work together like tuning forks. So when you're in that place of caring, that organizes you. It integrates. Essentially, the more relaxed you are, the more aware you can be, and the more integrated. The less relaxed, the less aware, and the less integrated you become. If I had my way in our school systems and our parenting, I would inject this one It's like computer talk, one virus into the equation, which would be this message, which is consistently asking, what do you care about? What do you care about? You know, most of the time, children in school and even at home are doing what they think they should. They're trying to get good grades or do it, trying to fit in at school, choosing out there from this, you know, how to be, which is important. I don't want to say that's not important. It is. But what's even more important when we're talking about children and integrating and learning, we build those neural pathways through practice. And when we enjoy the practice, the neural pathways grow much quicker. And if children are doing what they love, all the better. Choosing.
Mhm.
I think what I would love our children to be doing is choosing what they care about. And that's a practice. If they practice answering the question, what do I love? What would
Mhm.
I love to learn? They're integrating their thoughts and their feelings and their gut, their intuition. And when I talk about integration, I'm also talking about integrity. And integrity is when we do what we say and say what we do, when our head and our heart and our intuition are in alignment, that integration. And that begins from the inside out. And it organizes around what matters, what you love. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Hmm.
Um, I experienced having your questions when I took your course earlier this winter.
Mm-hmm.
And just the question, what do you care about? And you asked all of us, and then you put me on the spot and asked me, so Gudrun, what do you care about?
Hmm.
And I just I felt the heat in my face, and I contracted in my chest or
Mm-hmm.
stomach even. And I couldn't even think of a single thing. So I
Yeah.
tried to say something, and then it was very broad and general. And then, to try and target it and single it out and find the right word, it's very, very difficult. It's so simplistic and yet so it's a challenge when you're not used to thinking like that.
I really appreciated in our class together. We had a 30-day class for the listeners to know. It was, a session every day. And we created a safe container for, those reactions that came up in you to be held and honored. Because
Mhm.
those are strategies, those are parts of things that those are things you've learned in your life to do. And it's very common. We all have versions of that. And when you were talking about yourself just now, what happened is, I asked you the question that nobody asks us. What do you care about? What would you love to learn today in school? And what we end up doing is not exercising, not practicing what we feel. It's not valued a lot. What do you care about? What would you love? Not the questions we're asked. What we do focus on is getting things done, doing a good job on what we're told to do, and we sort of lose ourselves in that. But we just, yeah, for the sake of beautiful things, for the sake of belonging, for the sake of safety, we do what other people tell
Mhm.
us. And then, so it's, and if we don't use certain faculties, they atrophy. They they become from disuse. If we don't spend time really practicing what we love and feeling it and just thinking our way through things, our thinking becomes our mode of operation and our feelings become atrophied. And that is at the heart of the work that I love all those disciplines that I'm talking about. And they are in search of reclaiming our faculties for empathic listening, for listening, integrating our whole self and listening from that place of fullness.
So that quality of being able to listen empathically, that's also a muscle you really have to strive to practice. It's like it's a muscle. It's a discipline.
Mm-hmm.
It's very difficult when you're not used to being listened to or listening to others with your whole being, with your whole body, and listening with your emotions and really hearing what's going on with the other person.
Yeah. And it's, children get it quicker because they have not practiced as long as adults to not feel.
Yeah, to cutting off.
Yeah, and for good reasons. When we were working with you and your mind couldn't speak a feeling what you would care about, and your body got tight and contracted, then we go to the body. And
Mm,
children do this beautifully, most of them. Adults, again, have a harder time, but in the body, the contraction, I don't know where it was in you, but it's different with everybody, but often it's around the heart or the gut, our intuition, things, or even ourself. We hide those away because they're not honored in the world sometimes. In school, we're not seen, our hearts are not honored, so we hide them. It's a beautiful wisdom. These are strategies we learn. We contract around them to protect, to soften the pain,
mhm,
but we also lose some contact with those places when we protect. But we're protecting for beautiful reasons. And when we can really honor that younger part of ourselves, that put those strategies in place for good reasons, an inner trust starts to be built. And then a little more opening and vulnerability that's more skillful now as adults can learn new strategies as adults that are different than the ones we used as children. But first we have to honor.
mhm.
We have to honor those younger strategies because they came out of a deep care for us.
Because we weren't perhaps safe in that instance, and then we learned something. We learned to protect ourselves going forward.
Yeah, I love what my mother-in-law says, how she describes it. She said, um, being a child is often like being in a room with the doorknob only on the outside, where people can access us, but it's hard for us to access the adult world. So inside that room, we develop unique strategies for our deep needs of belonging, acceptance, of safety, deep needs. We all have those. But the strategies when we're
Mhm,
younger they come out of a unique situation. So in order to change those things, we have to really honor the source of those strategies, and then we can work with them instead of them feeling like pain in our bodies.
mhm. So just that single thought of being a child where the doorknob is on the outside and the child has no control over whether the adult listens to them or acknowledges them or enters the room or touches them, be it just with a toothbrush or, you know, just get dressed, um, do this, do that, and just that lack of control. Is that has that shifted you in a big way when you relate to children?
Oh yeah, well I was brought up in a kind of a family that was where I was told pretty much what to do. So there's a lot of things I as a parent I choose not to do, to choose to do differently. And I also really am very fortunate that my wife Judith I could follow her lead a lot around the children. Much more than telling the children what to do, her strategy was to help the children make their own choices, which usually took some time, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up in a culture, like a lot of us, where getting something done really matters. You know, you need to do that and get that, we get that done. Let's do that and get that done. And in my community, it'd be like, we'd have meetings and let's get this done. And why is this taking so long? And about 15 years into living in my intentional community where I live there, that something dawned on me. And that was this, that in these meetings, whether it's with our children or in the meetings of a community, to take the time to connect with the person you're talking with, really on a ground level connection, that is getting something done. Whether you build that structure or take care of that problem, if you are connecting to someone, that's getting something done. And often we want to teach our children things, but if we can teach our children how to connect on that kind of level, that will probably serve them better than anything else.
Than manners or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
How to
manners would fall if the child learns to connect first, the manners follow because that in itself is showing respect to someone, right?
Yeah, I don't know what the manners are that we're speaking of, but
So just the simplistic, the usual ones. Say thank you, eat your food, or ask permission if you want to step away from dinner, or whatever it is.
well, what happens if they don't do that? If you say eat your food or say thank you and they say no?
You have no control. It's very hard to manipulate a child
Right.
to say something.
Again, with nonviolent communication and that body of work, one thing
Mm-hmm.
it really brings home is how we use the reward and punishment system, which is actually can become very, in so many words, it's sort of a violent way of being because it's about controlling the other person. And also when people learn to navigate the world um, through a system of reward and punishment, it's like a carrot and stick. The motivation is from out there. They're learning to be good girls or boys or however that is because of what other people say and not from an inner compass. And to me, for my children to go into the world, the thing I want them to do is lead themselves from the inside out, from what matters to them as they're working with other people. It's power versus sort of a forcefulness. And also it's intrinsic motivation versus extrinsic motivation. And
Mm-hmm.
that to me is that's so important. It's worth the time to, if the child is saying, no, I don't want to eat. Huh. To be caring and curious and
Mm-hmm.
not assume you know the answers. That I think is a really big deal. Here's a tip.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a tip for those parents out there. I'm a grandfather and I'm just loving it. And I have two sons. Strong, beautiful men, and they're married and they each have one child. And from early on as a parent, somehow I stumbled into this strategy that was honest. I would be at a fighting with one of my sons, and I just didn't know what to do. And then I would say something like this. And when they were really young, and I still feel good about that strategy, but I would say something like, um, this being a dad is really new to me. And I really care um, that I'd be a good dad. And when you are throwing the food all around and yelling and or something, whatever they're doing, I say, I don't. I say, if you were me, if you were a dad here, what would you say to your son? And they would almost always give me the best answers for how to be with them. And I think from that little strategy, they got that I respected their opinion. They got that I don't know all the answers and I don't pretend to. So they see me as a person. And we built a relationship based on really listening to each other and valuing each other's opinions, actually seeking it out.
So perhaps what you were asking your boy there was, what is your need here? What do you need?
I'm really asking them their need. What would they love? And it's a challenge because if they hear those kind of questions over and over, they start to go,
Yeah,
I don't
it's
want,
too
I don't want,
abstract.
you got to use your imagination.
Mm.
That I love. You know, how would you love to be in this relationship here? How would you love to be spoken to? And just being curious. And by the way, that is like an empathic question. In nonviolent communication, that's another distinction, a really great tool. Um, one, of course, if you're triggered or you're contracted around your child, you got to do your own work, and that means really going to the heart of what it is that's going on inside of you, so you don't blame it on the child or. But then when you are centered in your heart, then opening, um, listening, and it's like this person in front of me, just like you're a mystery. If we're all universes onto ourselves, we can't really, we can only know a little part of each other. And to walk into that
Mm.
with a, I don't know what to do here. I do know that I deeply care about you and I will do whatever I can to for your safety, for to be, a good parent.
Mm.
And not but, and I don't know. So walking in with that curiosity when they're upset. Let's say they're upset because they want to go out and play. They don't want to go to school and they want to do, that kind of thing. And instead of trying to change them, it's like you get behind them and you look over their shoulders to see what they're seeing. And you put your heart behind their heart. And you say something like, is it really hard to to get in a car to go to school when it's so sunny out? You want to play? Is that what you're saying?
Mm.
And you give it space, and they don't know, that you're not. I'm not telling them to do anything. I'm just really deeply caring, curious, and I really want to hear, and I want to understand. That
Mm.
calms their system, calms my system, and they go, "Yeah, I just want to play." And you go, "Yeah," giving them less to resist, giving it space, and then really hearing them, and then potentially there, when you really on the same page, not as a manipulation, strategies emerge, mutual strategies. And they may look different than you think because it's not just your strategy, it's a mutual one. And
Mm.
that's a really powerful lesson to teach your children.
Yeah, we figure this out together.
Hmm.
Yeah.
we're in it together. And
Mm-hmm.
mostly, I want you to be able to navigate the world from an empowered sense of self, empowered and resourced sense of self. And you can guide them in that practice of learning that for themselves. And that's
So what you
very different than punishment and reward.
very different, yeah. So what you did just there, you circled around your child and you looked over their shoulder, you put your hand on their back where their heart is, you imagined what they are seeing. This is somatic. So this is your work. This is what
Yes,
you do.
it
You
is.
bring movement to ideas.
Hmm. Yeah, I do. I bring movement to the words because, our communication is physical. I'm watching my pre-verbal grandchildren learn to talk. They're just getting words, but mostly it's physical. And there's so much that is physical in what we communicate, and that is a big part of my training. Because if we're tight inside and tense inside because something is up for us inside ourselves, and then we're putting nice words on top of it, then what that person is going to, what you're going to transmit, and what that person listening is going to hear is a double message that's confusing. A person
Mhm.
listening is going to go, something doesn't feel right. Even if they don't consciously know that, they're going to feel it. And that is absolutely what I experience over and over and over and over in my workshops. And for example, if I'm, and this is again, you can create strategies of your own around certain things that are common sense, but maybe not so common. And that is like if I'm standing in front of you and you're pointing at me and you're telling me, you're upset with me. It's like that is coming straight at me and it hits me. And that's the thing. It actually in your intention is an energy, you know. It hits. And most of us are taught that we should take it. We need to take it. And meanwhile, when we start to take it, we get overloaded. Our systems overload. We go into default modes of fight, flight, and freeze, and all that. And we have to learn how to let things go by sometimes. So actually, by moving a little to the side, as we do in our classes, we let some of that go by. And then while that's going by, we remember, we do some self empathy, remember who we are, what matters to us, what we care about, our ground level. And that brings us back to a place where we can actually listen better. So we get off the line of that attack, if you will, center ourselves. And then, like we were talking before, you can go behind the person to just listen. And it's um, if you're interested in kind of seeing more of that, there's a couple ways you can do it with me. I have a book out, and I have plenty of YouTube videos. You can go to my uh, channel, and I have a practice there called the spiral blend, and that's what we're describing now. You can get a visual of it, and it'll show you about it. And the name of the book and the name of the practice is Becoming What You Need, and the subtitle is Practices for Embodying Nonviolent Communication. And we talk about needs a lot. And maybe I just give you a little understanding of what that means. Um,
Yeah, please do.
yeah, needs, and again, like any discipline, everybody interprets it their own way. And I take the liberty of interpreting it my way. And I'm just saying this is my way. And it's not a comment on how anyone else teaches.
Mhm.
This is how I've learned to understand it. Needs are things that are mostly they are states of being, for example, um, and they are something that we all share. For example, um, integrity. Do you need integrity in your life? Do you need integrity in your life? Um, and most everybody I talk to say, yeah, that quality of integrity, I need that in relationships, inside me, with others, or play. We all need to play. Acceptance. That's a really powerful thing. Self-acceptance in particular. Empathy. Um, these, when you know you are speaking about a need when it's something that we all need.
A big need for me is belonging. That's and I see it in children as well. It's
Mm,
a human need to belong.
that is really core, and especially when I'm working with adults too, at the base of a lot of those strategies, and some of those strategies are pretty tragic. At the ground level of that, the need for belonging and safety really come up a lot, and we all need that. Um, and what these are for me and how I approach them. I approach this work, nonviolent communication, as I approach those somatics, as I approach Aikido and consensus as whole lifelong practices and disciplines and arts. Um, and honestly, since they are all whole life practices, I can find my life in those practices and metaphors for who I want to be and what I want to practice. And if they're all whole life practices, then they all have it all. So I go between those and pull pieces from each of those disciplines because to me they're they're a life practice. So they I can find corresponding places. So the
Mm.
language of NVC, the physicality of Aikido, the importance of consensus. Um, anyway.
Can I ask you to talk a little bit about consensus? That's a big one. So
Oh,
if
yeah, I
you're
can.
raising a
I can.
child, yeah.
Woo. Well, consensus, yes, absolutely. What is consensus? Any of us adults who've tried consensus in meetings just go, we don't like it because it's like, what? You mean we all have to agree? And how many meetings is this going to take? And et cetera, et cetera. Consensus is a way of, it's not necessarily what you do in a meeting, it's who you are as you show up. And it is about listening to the deeper needs of everybody so that mutual strategies emerge. That's what it is. And the practice of it is a practice that reclaims those atrophied um, faculties for listening deeply to each other. Hmm.
Mm.
I want to say something about that, and I'll expand it out for a second, but it's a big picture. Imagine, how we evolved. We were in tribes, living in nature. We were constantly, interacting, and not only interacting with each other, but interacting with the nature around us. This, oh, first of all, everything we're all, I got to say this, you're always practicing something. You listeners, you're practicing how you're sitting, you're practicing how you're breathing, you're practicing how you're judging me or not. This is how we learn. We're always practicing something. We are what we have practiced, and we can, through deliberate and intentional practice, practice who it is we choose to become. So, in imagining back to that time of tribes, we're practicing empathy. We're practicing listening deeply to each other, to the nature around us. And that was really that faculty for that deep listening is how we evolved. Then, we in modern society, again, thinking really um, is more predominant. It's rewarded. How well you think and how you feel is really not very rewarded, if you will. It's not something that is valued as much, and we don't have as much place to practice. So it becomes atrophied.
Mhm.
So for me, as much.
Atrophied, atrophy, that's just like to clarify on that word. It's essentially, it's a muscle that is not in use, so it becomes weaker.
Right. One thing in nature is use it or lose it, because nature is
Yeah.
very opportunistic. Um, so other things start to be more dominant. At any rate, so there's so much we have lost. If you look around the world and you look at our ecosystem, you can see, the pristine ancient ecosystems are vastly dwindled. And the human ecosystem, the depthful relationships is a direct reflection of that. We have lost that much in our abilities to relate to each other. And the good news is recognizing that we can begin to reclaim it through generations. And for me, this work, empathy, puts us in touch with the life in you, your needs, the life in me, my needs, the life of the planet, our collective needs. That's what empathy is in its biggest sense. It's not how we talk or listen. It's about being present and open and and listening, not just to words, but to the deeper sources. And
Mm.
when we do that and listen to more of our collective needs, we make comprehensive decisions that will last generations. Um, and we also recognize there's so much to reclaim right now that we can't do it in our lifetimes. So we have to work with our children so they can carry on that learning. And that is what I care about. That is what my commitment is yeah, is to see more than my generations, not just forward but back. Recognizing that continuum. I hope that makes some sense. I know I'm kind of expounding out on a bigger
It
picture.
makes, um, just looking at your face, speaking right now, I clearly see this. This is what matters to you. Um, you have integrity in your words, so I can see that your words align with how you feel when you're
Mm-hmm.
saying these things.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Ah,
see it in action, what you're talking about.
thank you. And just circling back to the original question then. So consensus to me and the practice of it is like a piece of that ancient community. And by its practice, it teaches us what it is. It teaches us what community is. Because really, honestly, none of us really know. And I've only been in an intentional community for 31 years. I get a glimpse, and I'm so happy for that glimpse. But consensus and the practice of it it teaches us what it means. And the same thing with needs. By practicing needs as a whole mind, body, energetic experience, it teaches us. And I'll give an example for you and for the audience. Ask yourself. Sit up, first of all, everybody, if you're listening and really want to follow in and curious about what I'm talking about, a somatic experience of needs or deep needs. Let's pick one. I'm going to pick kindness. Now, we all need kindness. I know that. Who doesn't need kindness? That's a need. What is kindness? Now, we could think about that and we could give an answer. But if these needs represent something, these needs are words we use to describe the life that moves through us. How can these words do it justice? The idea is that these words represent something that is we could study for the rest of our lives and find new meaning in every day. So to begin with, ask yourself. This is an empathy question to your body. Ask your body this. But before you do, take a deep breath. Go. And relax your system. Thank you. Relax your system. Make a noise. It's like the. It's hard. I know it's embarrassing, but it feels good. Anyway, just make a noise. Everybody take a deep breath in, and then ask yourself, ask your body, how would it feel to have just a little bit more gratitude? What would that feel like if you just had a tiny bit more gratitude in your life? What would that feel like? And as you do that, just await the answer. Let your body respond. You know, if I ask you, what is it? When I ask you, how would it feel to have a little more gratitude right now? What do you notice?
I notice, well, first of all, my system relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
I felt a little bit of a hint of a smile, just a little bit, just an uptuck. I also felt hope.
Mm-hmm.
I felt hopeful.
Mm-hmm.
So immediately I felt more, I felt better immediately.
So the question,
a little bit, yeah.
The questions no, that's fine. And the hope and relaxed. For the listeners too in this practice, first of all, just by asking that question, you're getting some information. And sometimes we feel tighter because there's a historical something in there that says, well, maybe I'm afraid of kindness, or maybe I don't deserve it, or some other story. That's an old strategy. But for right now, it sounds like it relaxes your body. And for you listeners, if your body does tighten, then just ask for less. How about just half of that amount of kindness, or or one molecule, and watch what happens. And then ask yourself something like this. When you said I relaxed, where in your body did you relax?
I felt it in my chest, mainly.
It makes sense somehow around kindness in the heart.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the last thing is, just as funny as it might sound, your body responded to you. And just say thank you, appreciate that. And when you ask a question and someone responds, even if you don't like the answer, just appreciate that it responded to you. And when you do that, what do you notice?
I feel, well, my brain told me that it's a practice. So I felt, when I listened to my body and it responds to me and I can receive it and listen and thank my body for it, it's a practice, and I get to practice every day if I want to, many times a day, so I can tune in a little bit better, just a
Hmm.
tiny bit better, maybe.
Yeah. And just for that moment when you appreciate that your body is actually responding to you, what happens in your chest, for example?
Yeah, I feel, again, I have ideas. I feel more trust. I feel that I can carry myself,
Hmm.
um, because it's within me. It's not on the outside. It's here. So if I listen to it, if I just don't forget to listen to what my body is trying to tell me,
Hmm.
uh, then immediately I am doing better
Yeah.
and
And
feeling better.
yeah, and that
Yeah,
with that trust is there's a corresponding piece, which is generally you relax even a little bit more because with
yeah.
every
Hmm.
same thing with our children. Sometimes their strategies are kind of tragic, you know, but they're doing their best because underneath it there's something really beautiful. And the more you can begin to appreciate the intention under the strategy, which is the person under the strategy, the better chance you have to work with instead of against that person.
And in that case, strategy is essentially their behavior.
Right.
That's what we see. We see the behavior, and we're often very concerned with the behavior, and we want to change it.
Right. And then we can also look at ourselves and going, what is it? For example, give me an example of that. If you were working with your child and you didn't like a behavior.
So an example that came to mind from this evening. Um, we were putting our girls to sleep, and my husband was very concerned with it getting a little bit late, like 5 or 10 minutes late. Um, and the little one was crying, and the older one, I was sitting with her by her side, and she said, "She's always crying. She's always crying." Like it was a nuisance. It was something that she wanted to go without. And normally she's very, very calm about her sister crying.
Hmm.
So normally she's not concerned with it, and she doesn't want to change it. She's not concerned with controlling it.
Hmm.
But in that instance, the parents, we were a little bit controlling. We were um, stressed, perhaps a little bit stressed. So she got concerned with controlling her sister in the other room. And I said, well, she's just doing what she needs. We always say crying is good and it's healthy.
Hmm.
And in that moment, I saw her whole body relaxing, and
Hmm.
she almost started crying herself. So,
That's empathy,
mhm.
and it's always mutual. You've touched when when you listen with empathy and something like that, where you didn't judge her strategies, you didn't judge what she said, you went to the heart of it, and and even and yeah, you let her know that because probably a part of her was worried about her sister, probably a part of it was worried about you, concerned for your state of being, and you put that at ease.
Yeah.
Another way of saying that might be to look at your younger daughter and just say, um, when she cries like that, it sounds like it's upsetting for you. Is that true?
Are you asking me?
Well, I was going to say, what would she say? Imagine you were her for a
Yeah,
second.
yeah, yeah. Hmm. My older daughter.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
no, no. You were sitting with the younger one, right?
Yeah. I was
And
sitting with the older one, and the younger one was crying. Yeah.
oh, I see. Yeah, and so you say to the older child, you know, huh, is, sounds like it's a little hard to hear your sister crying right now. Is that right? Not judging it. That's the caring, curious question.
Yeah. She would say yes. That was her. I think that was her concern.
Hmm.
It was in the moment. She was worried about it.
Yeah, and the thing is, when you ask a caring, curious question, it's not about knowing the answers. It's not about that I should know the answers and I should be right about it.
Mm.
It's about connecting. Because once you connect, then your daughter would give you more information. And you keep following the breadcrumbs for the sake of understanding. And that calms when someone really feels like you care genuinely and you're really curious about them because you really want to understand their system. What's to resist, really?
Hmm. There was a part in your book,
Hmm.
Becoming What You Need,
Hmm.
um, which I loved. I I really would like to. Would you like me to show the text to you so you could
Sure,
speak on it?
sure.
It's it's better than chocolate. I think I can share the screen.
Mm.
Let's see. Yeah,
Yeah.
here it is. Can you see it?
Would you like me to read it?
Yeah, if you'd like.
Sure. Um, I can do that. Let's see. Yeah, this was again just an amazing moment in for me, and at one of my trainings, and it was a group of children, and what page is that on there?
I'm not sure. Let me see. You can also read it straight from the screen. Can you see
Yeah,
it?
I can. Okay, you'll scroll it down when I get down to the bottom.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and yeah, I just again one of those amazing moments with children where they teach me, and I do walk into these classes with an attitude that we're all teachers. The children teach me, I teach them, we all teach each other. That's part of my martial art training too. It's a dojo, and as a leader, I keep I keep the the container. I watch it so it's safe. That's my job. Better than chocolate. The following is a wonderful story and practice that materialized in one of my classes of 7 to 12-year-olds. It came on the heels of a heartwarming 3-day intensive training with several of their parents. After a bit of play and getting to know one another, I asked this question to the children sitting around the circle. What do you really love? This kind of question is so rarely asked of us in our early years that most of us find ourselves struggling for an answer, even now. But finding an answer puts us directly in touch with our deeper needs. One of the children exclaimed, "Ice cream!" I suggested she imagine a tall building and that if ice cream were one of the upper floors, what would be on the ground floor? Her voice softened and a tiny bit of color came to her face as she said, "My family and my dog." I asked her to point to where in her body the center of that loving feeling was and to say how it felt. She pointed to just below the middle of her chest and said, "Nice." Then I walked about 10 feet away, turned and faced her, and asked that she imagine I was someone she had never met before, a stranger. And from that distance I asked, "Am I in your space now?" To which she replied, "No." If she had said yes, I would have backed up until she felt relaxed, and then checked with her to be sure that I was not in her space. Her task was to say stop when I entered her personal space as I slowly walked to her. When I was about 4 feet away, she said, "Stop." I said, "Where in your body do you feel the feeling that tells you I am in your space?" These are unusual questions to ask anyone, but with a little coaching, people will notice the tensions and contractions that occur somewhere in their bodies that alert them to a possible danger. She pointed to her chest and said that it felt tense. Together, we connected the dots. This was the same spot where she most acutely felt that feeling of love, too. I suggested the tensing might be her own love and caring trying to get her attention to warn her so she would be safe. She agreed. I coached her to say to that place in her chest, "Thank you for warming me and caring for me." She realized that as she acknowledged that place, the tension in her chest relaxed and she felt much better. I moved a little closer and again a slight triggering came up in her chest. I suggested that she engage that tense spot in a conversation, beginning with, "I am listening. And what would you suggest I do now?" She did this, and to my amazement, she simply walked around me like a passerby on the street. She then thanked this inner voice for the caring and guidance. She lit up immediately, understanding the value of being able to turn inward to find clarity and counsel from a place that cared deeply about her safety and well being. I asked how it felt to have this inner friend, and she exclaimed, "It's better than chocolate." We high fived. Each of us is born.
I, th- I think I think this is another part.
Oh, yeah.
Are you?
Well, um, there's something
So,
else that was really right after that.
mhm.
She said, "Oh, it's really um, uh, what she actually. Oh, let's see. Better than chocolate." And I presume you can edit this big stall out, but I'm gonna
Oh,
find it.
yeah, of course. Hmm.
I am gonna find it. There it is. We high fived. I proceeded to do the same process with minor variations with each of the 10 kids in the workshop and had a very similar experience with each child. After class, one of the children came up to me and said, "My father works so hard. I wish he would listen to that part of himself more. I think he'd be a lot happier." Imagine how it would be to grow up cultivating such a friendship with our own bodies. In adult workshops that I teach, it's pretty clear that these inner friends that put us in touch with our needs have too often been ignored for a very long time. The deep pain and joy of reunion can be really profound.
Hmm.
Children are so much closer to that kind of listening than adults. You want to hear a really amazing story?
Yes.
At a similar workshop, same age kids, about the same number of kids. I do this game, and it's a teaching game, of course. They're all teaching games. And I asked Now, so use your imagination. I'll describe it as best I can. We're all, they're all standing in a circle. Um, and if they spread their arms out, that's how far apart they are. And maybe 10 or 11 kids. And I stood in the middle, and I had a big stick. This game is called Edge of the Volcano, or I call it that. And what I do is this: I say, "Now watch me," and I come down, and I actually, carefully, but I've been studying the martial art for 45 years. I'm pretty controlled about it. And I come down to kind of like a cut, with the stick. It's at the stick's 2 meters long, and their job is to step off the line, step off of it, just to the left or the right, and the stick goes down. Okay. And I would do that with each one of them, and they're all watching me, and they each move. And also one of the kids' grandfather, who actually studied Aikido, was outside the circle watching. And as I did this, the kids could see with each other that they kind of move out of the way and they kind of jerk out of the way, and it's really hard for them to move. And not hard, it's like, because they're reacting. And then I teach them something else. I teach them to bring their imagination, their attention all around them, like they're in a big bubble, and they're in the middle of it. And by the way, this is a practice of empathy, and I teach it to adults too. I imagine them putting that care into that bubble all around them, or empathy, and that they're in the middle of it, that bubble, and they'll get the bubble bigger and bigger in all directions, above, below, left, right, front, back, till it touches me and then includes me. So I'm in each of the kids' bubble. And then I do the same stick thing. And I tell the kids, make sure your bubble stays open. If it closes, just open it again, real quick. And then I went around, and every kid moved out of the way really gently. Really, timing was perfect, really smooth, right? And that alone was incredible, because what they do is they feel me attacking before I even move. And so when I strike, they move first. Now that's incredible. And by the way, that is Aikido. Then we tried something else. Then I asked all the kids to close their eyes. And they all closed their eyes. And randomly, I went to strike each kid. And with their eye, and I did it, I didn't just go 1, 2, 3 so they could guess. I did it randomly, to the left, to the right, front, back, all different kids. Every single kid moved off the line perfectly with their eyes closed. And I walked out, and then that was it. Then I walked out of the circle, and the old man, who is the old Aikidoist, he looks at me, goes, huh, adults can't do that. True story.
Mm. That's magic.
It
Can I
is.
ask? I
Mhm.
might be ruining that magic. Um,
Nah.
would you talk to your child? So let's say the child is uh, younger than 10, but already thinking smart child. Would you teach them that if I or your teacher or your friend is pointing the finger at you, being all mad, um, to do the offline thing, the same thing you teach adults, would you teach them that practice?
I would. In I have. And they have my sons have developed that in their own ways of having a strong center, and really being able to kind of pivot off that attack and not take it personally, which actually helps you to listen better to the other person. It's not just getting away. It's not letting that blame or shaming hit you. So my kids have a pretty strong sense of self, and they know all my practices. And I think, the idea of practicing it like training wheels, and I think they have, but I think they've let go of the training wheels and creatively found their own ways.
So what happens if somebody is letting it rain on you, accusations, blaming? What happens if it hits you right in the chest? Is you lose your worth, like your worth drops,
Hmm.
sometimes dramatically, depending on your story, how your own upbringing was, or your sense of self and your center. So I remember with my husband many years ago, he came at me like this, like a teacher. He used to be a teacher as well. Um, and my self worth dropped. And from that place, I was not able to see his view, to see what the feeling was behind his words and how he was vulnerable, and his need was to protect or something. He had a bigger need behind what his actions were, and I was not able to see any of that because my worth was down. So without worth, you can't really relate to another.
Yeah.
So that's essentially what you're saying. But yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. Well, when I work with adults, it's the same thing as working with children. For me, I just have to use maybe different language and imagination, so it fits the
Hmm.
person. But you were in my class too. When if you imagine that moment with your husband and that sense of self of lack of worth, as you described, if you imagine that as happening right now, just in a kind of a to explore it, there's something
Hmm.
that corresponds, that goes on in your body. See, you could try to figure it out in your head, but when you go to the body, it's direct.
Hmm.
And so, when that happens, and this is what we do, and I would ask permission, for to really, and same thing with the child. I would say, do you want to talk about that? You know, I'd be happy to be here for you or something. And if I said that to you, I'd mean that too. And I would say, where in your body when that happened, what happened, how did you feel? And I would wager that, something in you tightened.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Contracted.
yeah.
In that moment, it was a few years ago, so I can really reflect on my growth since
Mm-hmm.
then. So if it happened today, it wouldn't happen today with either of us. We've evolved a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but in that moment, those years ago, I remember it like there was a truck coming on full speed and hitting me.
Mm-hmm.
So it was my whole middle. It was my whole body that was just. It
Right.
was a big feeling. So yeah.
Yeah. So I would put my somatic coaching hat on at that moment, and ask permission if if we wanted to work with that, and this would be the steps.
Mhm.
And we would say, where do you notice it? And that sounds like it was a big overload. It just kind of tightened all through your body. So we would that's a sign of an overwhelm. And when you see someone doing that, you can actually see people overwhelmed. That's too much, and you can't really process it in that. You have to bring it down to less and work with less. So you might do a little centering and then find where the epicenter is. Where does it begin? When it's just a little bit less. And then the question is, when did you learn to do that? Because that is a strategy. That a protection mechanism is a strategy. And and how I'd coach people, I'd say best guess, and most people say something like, I don't know, 6 years old, whatever it is. And then I'll often, very often, people would say, yeah, I don't know. I was like, and I go, the next question I'd say, what was going on around you at that time? Best imagination. And they would say something like, I don't know. I was like, I'm in school. And it was just, it was scary or something like that. Very common. And so they'd say, oh, first question was where. So they point to the place it tightens. Let's say it's the heart. When did you learn to tighten like that? 6. How what was going on? And usually it's something like school or something that happened. Sometimes it's very intense, so you have to enter these places with great honor and respect and gentle, no pushing. And then what was the need? And often something like in the school situation, safety or belonging. And you learn to keep your heart to yourself because maybe it's not honored and valued in that situation. And then you take a moment. This is the piece, we can still do this with our children. You take a moment and go, so that younger part of you is still working for your sense of safety, or and belonging, or whatever it was, the need. Take a moment and without judging the strategy, just appreciate the intention. Just can you do that? Would you do that? And they usually can, with again a little coaching, just look at that younger part of that them. Know that right now their heart is still intact, so something worked. And it might not be the perfect strategy, but the intention was out of care. And to turn to that place and just say, thank you, because that part is still working so hard for you, that younger you. Thank you. And that's the beginning of connection. And that usually is the beginning, with the lightest of touch in that moment, of healing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And my point also with your strategies to moving off the line,
Yeah,
you are it your ego is not as involved in the whole story in what's happening. So it moves by you, it comes at you, and you move off the line, so it flies by you. And then you can get curious, and you can really try to see the other's
yeah,
perspective and the need
that's it.
in
That's a
your own self-worth, it's intact, so it's not your ego. The ego is not hurt at that point. So then you're more flexible, you're more able to continue the conversation.
right. And you're also noticing in time what's in the way of that self-worth. Because you have self-worth. There's something that a, a strategy that's in the way, or and to open yourself to that, you cannot just disregard your history. You have to honor it, and then
Mm-hmm.
things change. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. So you would
But
work.
the getting off the line, though, what that is, it's self-regulation. It's learning what's too much for your system to take in. Because if your system's overloaded, you can't function effectively. So, in order to function effectively and listen better to yourself and others, you have to know when your system is overloaded, and a way to relieve it and center and come back to remembering who you are. And then you can listen.
Hmm. So boundaries, are you do you talk about boundaries a lot? Are you
Yes.
concerned with, yeah?
Well, that little demonstration I talked about working with the children, the practice of the bubble, and teaching them to pay attention to the space within and around them, which kids do incredibly well. And it's adults do too. But to imagine that space around you and filling it with care or listening, um, that becomes a place to be aware of your boundaries. It actually, it's not a wall, it's a choice maker. You can feel when someone is coming too close. If someone comes too close physically, that's a danger, maybe. And again, this bubble of empathic listening helps you to discern because you can feel people's intentions much more accurately when you include them in your empathic listening. And that's a practice and a skill.
Hmm.
You can know that. And that, again, so it's a choice maker. And if someone you don't want in your space, if they're coming in, instead of trying to control them, if you feel that, then you can move away.
You can get around, or
Yeah,
just as the girl in the chocolate store did. Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. You can feel that. You can feel danger. It becomes yeah, like a choice maker, a shock absorber. When
Mm.
something hits, in, it, if you don't pay attention to your periphery, you get shocked. When you're paying attention, you can make, you can be more discerning and safer.
Mm.
You can
Yeah.
feel an attack. You can feel an attack before it happens, honestly, through empathic listening.
So imagine you have a child in a schoolroom, and you're teaching the, like my girl is in the first grade of school, and she often talks about how loud it is and how many children there are, and the teachers are so and so. They are not all always kind. They might be a little bit, strict,
Overworked.
overworked, yeah,
Yeah.
stressed out, overwhelmed. So a thing for her to learn might be to learn this bubble thing and including her teacher, and then be more open to the messages of the teacher, but also their energy. So if she doesn't like the energy anymore, she could move out of the line, or she could try and protect. This could also be an island. So here we are on an island, and this island invites only what you like. So only the energy. You're filling the bubble with care, and that means the bubble is filled with care. So somebody who is dysregulated or violent is not caring. So that would that would raise an alarm for the child.
That is definitely one piece. Another thing is when you include someone empathically, and this is not all the time, but often, it it is a very calming effect. So if you were a teacher or a parent and you include a child in this field of listening and you transmit your state of being, that, like tuning forks, that's how it works. We transmit our state of being, and if you are calm and loving in that field of listening and inclusive, it changes. It's it's like being held, like a baby being held. That's why people cry a lot in my classes, because everybody is practicing listening that way. And when you're being held, that it's hard to hold emotions in because there's no real good reason to.
Mm.
So it's very healing. And And the bubble, I mean, the getting off the line. I call that wind, by the way. And
Mm-hmm.
when you move to wind to let something go by, um, it is the practice of not taking what someone else says personally. It's not a practice. It's not that you're not listening, but it's separating yourself from what's being said enough to recognize that you are not what other people think.
Mm-hmm.
That is, if teaching our children to listen, but not take things so personally, so they can just listen from a calmer state. That's a great skill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really hope our audience have followed us through
Mm,
our conversation.
mm,
I really appreciate how careful you've been. You've been full of care. You've
thank
been
you,
very giving. I
thank you.
very I appreciate this.
Feelings mutual.
Thank you so much. So if somebody's interested, they could find your workshops online.
Yeah,
They
yeah, yeah.
might see you. They might see you later on a Europe tour, maybe in Iceland,
I would love
perhaps.
that. I would love that. Yeah, I have, with COVID, I haven't been traveling. I've been online and loving it, by the way, because it works and it's intimate and it's connective. And I have a summer program coming up that's going to be a 3-month intensive, which is going to be, I think, really lovely and a lot of good learning. And I have a nice team working with me that is very excited about the work. And so it's going to be really, I think it's going to be a really great learning space together and held beautifully. And my website is www.liminalsomatics.com. And that's where I post these kind of things. And I'm also very open to your listeners if they want to just write me a note to my email and have a conversation about any of this.
Hmm. It was beautiful. Thank you so much, David.
Hmm. It's really nice to reconnect with you too. It's been again, I just um, thank you for inviting me and for your care. It really, um, thank you.
Thank you. I'm gonna pause the recording.
Hmm.
Yeah, we did a nice long recording.
I was thinking about one more story if you want
Yeah, let's
to.
do that.
All right, because this is I just and you could fit it in. You could do anything you want with any of this stuff. Okay,
Yeah, yeah, of course. Thank you.
but I never told this story, so I'd like to, and I think you reminded me of it. So,
Hmm.
um, we were talking about when kids are younger and not taking things, how hard it is when teachers or people around you are pointing their fingers at you and telling you you're stupid or bad or whatever they tell you, and it really and peers too. Sometimes they could be the worst. Well,
Hmm.
so my son Sam, my younger son Sam, when he was in, pretty sure it was second grade, maybe first, I think it was second, and we had a night, him and me. We were going driving in my truck, my pickup, and he was in the dark side of the cab, and we're driving along, and his little voice, he said, "Dad, what's your deepest, darkest secret?" Well, I pulled over the truck, and that was a pretty serious question. And I thought to myself, and I said to him, Sam, I don't know what my deepest, darkest secret is, but here's something that I never told anybody. And I told him something that I'm still not going to tell him. I'm not telling you. I'm not going to tell anybody. Just going to say it was honestly something that I hold dear, and I shared my vulnerability with him, which he felt. And again, that's a big piece of it. I was genuinely vulnerable and even had to muster some courage to speak about something to him. He felt that, and that opened him a little bit because I said, Sam, after we sat a little bit, I told him what I told him. I said, Sam, what's your deepest, darkest secret? And there was some silence, space for a little bit. And by the way, space is a really nice thing to offer someone. That's a really big skill, important. Yeah, I gave some space, and he said in that little voice, well, there's this girl I like, and it's really weird. Lyle, the guys in the class, they make fun of me when I'm playing with her, and it's really, and he just told me about how the boys made fun of him, and I didn't give him answers. I just and I just really listened to him, and I say, I kind of, yeah, I wonder why would they do that? And he's like, I don't know, what, and a little more talking and listening, where he kind of went, maybe they're just afraid of girls. And we're like, yeah. And then and I was like, why would they be afraid of girls? Girls are just people, huh? And that was the conversation, and it went on a little more. It was like, yeah, because Sam wasn't afraid of girls, and he didn't, they were just people, and that's how he felt. And these other people were afraid and saying mean things, and he realized that those mean things that they were saying came from their fears, and they were not his. And all of a sudden, something in him just went, a light went on. And then he said, yeah, and Dad, you'd really like her. Yeah, she's really funny. She's got a hamster, just like me. And she's got really pretty eyes too, and from that day on, Sam was never uncomfortable around girls or women. The way some of us who never have that little lesson that we're all just people. And so that's the beautiful opportunity of being vulnerable with um, our children and sharing our own confusion and figuring and letting them and listening to what's underneath. Anyway, it was one of my favorite moments with my child, and I so wish that had happened with me when I was a child.
Yeah, with your father sharing something vulnerable about him.
Yeah, it rare and
and
didn't.
giving you space to think and then respond. Or
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm valued, and that we're in it together. We really, and what a mystery it all is. And yeah, that's,
Hmm.
it was an open state of curiosity, care, courage, centering myself, really. And within that is also the commitment that I have as a parent and creativity in that conversation. And I have to say, there was some confidence in what I knew and practiced in my life, so that I could be there and comfortable with what was going on.
And you also had confidence in him.
Yeah.
Being a person, being a whole person.
Confidence is a need, and it's a quality of being, right? Mine, his, it's equality. I just named 7 C's, and that's another part of my
Yeah,
work. Care,
right.
curiosity, courage, center, creativity, confidence, and commitment. To learn any art, those are that's my distillation of what we need. And that'll be a part of the workshops. I hope some people can make them. Or maybe sometime in Iceland. That would be lovely.
Well, thank you.
Hmm.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
I think it would be.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
So, is everything empty? Are you happy?
I
I'm very
am.
happy.
Are you? Good. 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 So are you gonna? Is it? How long is the interview going to be when you're done with any kind of editing and stuff? As long as you want.
We'll just see. I'm not afraid of. Yeah, I'm not afraid of length. I have
Okay.
confidence in our audience.
Well, good. Well,
So I'll just edit and then,
thanks. It was just fun to talk about it and all, and you feel good about it. And if there's anything else you need, um, let me know.
yeah, thank you.
Hmm.
I think
Mm.
it's this feeling of, I always get very excited before I record podcasts or conversations because it demands to be present, and that's
Hmm.
a present.
Yeah,
So it demands. I'm excited before I do it because I'm perhaps I'm doubting if I'm able to be present enough.
hmm,
But then when you get into the flow of the conversation and you're being present and the other is being present, there's no question that it's of worth. It's worth listening to because there's a connection. You know.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
If we're having fun and
Yeah.
enjoying the conversation, the listeners will too. And yeah, I appreciate that about you too. It was, as always, honestly, it's just a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So let's be in touch. I'm interested in the 3-month thing. I'm gonna check it out if the
Oh,
timing
great.
works.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be super nice. Super nice. Faith and Jenilyn and Ryan and Jennifer, they're the team, and they're practicing like every day, and they're gonna 3 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
First day is first one Mondays are going to be teaching. Wednesdays are going to be practices. Friday is going to be review and whatever's alive, and 3 months. So I would
Mm.
love, yeah, please
Yeah.
consider it. Let me know.
Yeah. I'll do that. Definitely. Thank you, David.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll send you. You can send me your recording if it's better than mine. It might be better. Um,
yeah.
you
My
could
sound has
send
been
me
really great the whole
yeah.
time.
You could you could send me it on. I'm gonna stop the recording now.
Me too.